some occult, esoteric, or dark art that you find bogus. Maybe it's astrology, homeopathy, prayer, Christianity. If not those, you probably can find some other occult practices that you think are sketchy. What makes them seem sketchy to you? Is it that they don't work? Is it that if they do work, it's probably just a placebo effect? Is it that people take on faith that they work without checking whether it does? Perhaps it's that whether they work or don't, you don't hear any attempt at an explanation for how they work. After all, occult means hidden, secret, concealed. Supposedly it works by some reliable law, maybe a supernatural one, a law that's described but never explained. Like astrology, how do planets shape character? There are all those charts that describe the reliable effect of planetary positions on personality, but what's the physical work involved? Is physical gravity changing physical brain shapes during development? Astrologers don't explore how it works. They take it on faith that it does, and reliably, like personality clockwork. Or take any religious theory of causality. For example, Christianity, since it's so popular. Christ died for our sins. Okay, you're a physical being. How did his physical death cause the forgiveness of your physical sins? Or for that matter, how did God create the universe? When we create something, there's physical work involved. But you don't hear anything about how God's will gets translated into physical work. It's just assumed God's will translated into physical creation. Now, if I've offended your faith, that's not my point. I'm just about to offend mine. But surely there's some occult practice that you consider hocus pocus bunkum. Maybe it's good therapy. Maybe it really helps people, even by the placebo effect. What's most sketchy is that the physical mechanisms are described and assumed, but never explained. How does this cause that? And the practitioners don't seem curious. They might claim they have an explanation, but it's just more description. For example, homeopathy explains the potency of its remedies by declaring the reliable law that diluting a substance makes it more potent. That's a description of what they claim to be a reliable law. It doesn't explain how it happens. Now, it's easy to doubt occult arts if you find science more credible. Sure, you might have doubts about this or that scientific finding, especially in the softer sciences like psychology, but you trust them to avoid unexplained occult forces. Science is a campaign to find natural explanations for natural phenomena. If you allow unexplained occult forces, what can't you explain? Now, I'm one of those soft social scientists. I think it's important for us to keep track of how we scientists are doing at eliminating those unexplained occult forces. I think it's only fair to admit that there's still some occultism tolerated in my soft sciences. Not just a little on the edges like Ghostbusters ESP labs, but across the soft sciences, even in biology. To expose this latent occultism, let's go all the way back to René Descartes, a key figure in the early natural science campaign. He hypothesized that there are two substances, res extensa, the material stuff extended in time and space, and res cogitans, the thinking stuff, which was somehow out there but not really anywhere. He just assumed it existed and had proof of it in his cogito ergo sum, basically an argument from doubt. Descartes concluded that since he can't prevent himself from being fooled into thinking wrong, he must be capable of thinking. It's more like, I can think wrong, therefore I think. Therefore dualism. There are two substances, matter and thinking. Okay, but what's the mechanism by which thinking ever gets instantiated in matter? Descartes said maybe there's a connection at the pineal gland, like an antenna, that runs thought into matter. No one bought it, and he didn't push it. It's just a guess at how it works. But was it even? I mean, even if you have a coupling between thinking and stuff and the material stuff that we are, you haven't explained how the thinking stuff gets turned into the material stuff. It's occult. Now, Descartes was a long time ago. Scientists move far beyond that kind of occult dualism, right? Though we still distinguish mind from brain, consciousness from neural activity, software from hardware, thoughts from neurochemical mechanisms, appetites from hormones, feelings from biosecretions, and the struggle for existence from DNA replication, we rejected Descartes' dualism long ago. right? Wrong. I'm saying we're still doing it. The death of Descartes' dualism is greatly exaggerated. We may reject it in principle, but dualism lives on in the double lives we soft scientific types engage in. See, as much as I respect the soft sciences and all the reliable descriptions we're uncovering, I think we have to admit that we're still leaning on some occult moves. Like once DNA starts replicating patterns, passively begetting patterns, the way any molecular catalysis works, somehow it crosses the threshold and becomes patterns struggling for their own existence, some replicating better than others until we get human minds. There are occult steps in that story, occult moves for how mattering emerges from matter. And more than we scientific folks would like to admit. We don't try to explain how mattering actually works. We treat it like a reliable law. Once there are information molecules and natural selection, life is reliably different from physics. Just assume it. Living beings have some special essence. We can't see it. We wouldn't call it soul or spirit because that sounds too woo-woo, but we'll call it subjectivity or agency or interiority or will. I'm saying whatever you call it, it still goes unexplained, and we need to admit it so we don't end up claiming we're beyond occult forces when we aren't. I love the sciences. I work in them. I find occult forces sketchy too, and what I'm trying to corner us with here is a recognition that until we can actually explain the physical work by which life and mind emerge within physical processes, we have to admit we've still got some occult dualism lingering in the sciences that claim to have dispelled them.